to this computer?
Oh, it's recording.
Good.
Yeah. Good. Okay, we're now officially opening the meeting that it's being recorded. And we have very good attendance. I mean, I think I could take instruction from a lot of the people attending, actually, because they have quite a lot of experience here. So between all of us, we'll be able to deal with anything that pops up. I just wanted to start the meeting by explaining why we have to file annual financial statements. And that's because the CRA, Canada Revenue Agency, requires us to file an annual charity return, which includes a report of the financial activity of every single chapter in the land. And we have to do that to maintain our charitable status. And we got our charitable status in the very early 1970s and have successfully maintained it ever since. The information in the annual charity report also includes our volunteer hours. And it's the information that's used to put on the charity directorate that's on the CRA website that the public can go and see when they want to check out what charities are up to. That's where all that information comes. It comes from us and all our annual reports that we file each year in the treasurer's report. All the other reports go to the annual report of the organization, which is not filed with the government. Oh, sorry. I forgot to take the battery out of my husband's clock. So it's going to do 10 of those. However. We are officially underway. The bells have told us. Are there any questions about the annual charity return and any information that generally you're interested in doing? The filing does include our audited financial statements, which we're required to file as well. That's the national ones. Okay. Next on the agenda is the guidelines for treasurers. I don't know whether you want things posted on screen share or most people have printed off copies to refer to themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Print it off.
Print it off?
I print it off.
Okay, that.
Yeah, I didn't print it off.
Okay, well there it is. It's just it's a one pager to keep the one pager. It's a two pager. Sorry.
I'm like, I got more than one page.
Yeah, right. There seem to be two in my hands here, so there's 10 pages. And it generally explains how we spend money and pay checks. And it's a good, straightforward guideline. And if in the course of actually doing anything you have any questions, feel free to send them in to the national office at any time. At this point, having looked at them during your printing off exercise, were there any particular sections that you wanted further elaboration on? And unfortunately, with screen share, I can't see hands up. Any questions?
No.
Yes, Jan?
Yes, Carol, did you get my email with regards to, and I don't know if that falls under here now for discussion or not.
Just a second. Yes, I did, and I have it.
But before that question, talks about seed money. And I know there's an explanation in here that the chapters should spend all the money that they raise during the year. So if you're left with very little at the end of the year, how does one come February when you're putting in your your membership fees and all the dues that are owed, how do you then donate to the different national and provincial funds if you have no money?
You should keep enough money to be able to pay the chapter levies, the membership fees you collect from members. The idea is not to make it go to zero. It's to not start collecting, sort of amounts that kind of just sit there and aren't doing any work, unless you're trying to establish a local scholarship fund or something of that nature. That's what the guidelines intended for.
Okay, so also then, if the provincial and national funds don't necessarily need to be donated to at the beginning of the year. They can be donated further along when you start fundraising. If you are down to a low amount of money and you still want to donate to the funds, but how national and provincial, when they're saying, oh gosh, we've only got X number of dollars in the funds. Yeah, like I don't know how that, do you not worry about what the balance is in the fund until the end of the year?
Usually we check to make sure there's enough money in the fund to do what the plans are at the beginning of the year. And that's why, for instance, for national funds, snack pack, we want to have all the funds in it as of December 31st of previous year for the next year's expenditure. The big fund contributions come in the fall every year because, like yourself, every chapter has fundraisers over the year. And so they don't have money at the beginning of the year.
Okay, so it's okay to wait till the fall when you do have the funds.
Yeah, because you can't donate money that you don't have. I mean, you could say to your members, look, it's really important. You want to do an individual donation, and then the member would get a tax receipt for that year for the up to anything $20 and over. But you can't get blood stone. So
you don't have to make sure that you have X number of dollars at the end of the year, the previous year, in your funds, because you do have to pay the levy and the insurance and the chapter fee and all that.
Yeah.
But say
bank charges,
Yeah. So, okay. So don't need to worry about getting down to a minimum amount of money, because we always would try and have a fair bit of money thinking, okay, going forward, we need this, but this is not what the mandate is of IODE. We're supposed to use it all, right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, some chapters do sort of carry like $1,000 in there, like just sitting around, but those are chapters that have more capacity to raise funds in the first place.
And it's okay to have GICs, and they're there for emergency.
That's right.
Using.
Yeah, and the part about donating to other chapters is somewhat misleading, because in fact, IODE chapters donated last year $179,171 to other charities. And we are really not supposed to be donating to non-qualified groups, like the people that aren't recognized unless they're health providers, governmental things. Because we have to do a separate schedule on money we give to what are called non-qualified donees. They're non-charities. For any donation in excess of $1,000, we have to fill out a separate form in our charity return, because the government really doesn't want us giving money to any old bit of whatever. And by and large, for instance, the 100th anniversary award or grant goes to a registered charity typically, but it's for a specified purpose. And the purpose doesn't have to be a picnic table or a bench in the park. It can be that, but it can also be sponsoring a program for youth to buy them winter clothes, stuff like that, if it's a regular registered group that does specialize in doing something like that. I think the guidelines are just a little bit too narrow in their description, and they end up us potentially giving money to non-entities, which we don't want to do. Michelle.
I have a question about membership fees, and we have had some new members that joined at our recent meeting. So they had the prorated fee of $17.50, Now, one member who decided she had, I told her the fee was $17.50, and she gave me a check that also paid for next year's fees. So I'm wondering logistically, the best way to handle that, because with the income tax receipt, the money came in 2024. So she would that would have to be recorded. Like, how does it work so that next year she's showing as having paid her fee, but she paid it the year before? Is that an issue?
In advance, you just have to explain in something that Roma will get, that it is next year's fee, but it's a tax receipt for this year. Because
Okay,
it is unusual. It's better to do it in the same year, but we regularly get the fees for like the last month of the year of a member joining. We don't get them until the next year, and we can't issue a tax receipt for the previous year. So that has caused some confusion in our membership numbers, as well as when to issue tax receipts. Because I look at the list and I see these $17.50 membership fees paid in 2024 back in the summer, and it's like, that's not on. These are definitely 2023 fees. And I check in the column, and of course they are 2023 new members, and the 2024 fee is missing. So Roma can't put two in the same place somehow. So we've rectified that, but it's an ongoing, trying to get the record straight is really important, and we do try.
yeah, so our rule has always been to pay January 1st for the new year.
That's right.
And but what I'm finding is that many people are no longer using checks, so they want to e-transfer, which we are in the process of setting that up so that that can be more convenient for some of our members. But I just had this one particular, because she said she didn't have a whole lot of checks, so when I said to her, normally this is how we do it, I said it will impact your income tax receipt because the money came in 2024, so that would have to be paid. But I just wanted to make sure with national that I'm able to record that in a way that it makes sense.
Yeah, just with an explanation. Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Valerie?
Oh, can I backtrack to donating money to individuals, because this is going to come up with IOD Alberta. One of the chapters has requested some funding for a high needs child in their neighborhood, in their town. So the aspect of donating to an individual will come up.
That is
tomorrow.
not a problem.
Pardon me?
It's non-registered organizations that's a problem, not individuals.
Okay, thank you very much.
Because we can give out bursaries to individuals and that sort of thing.
Oh, yes, of course. Okay, thank you.
That's okay. Thanks. Now on this second. Yeah, I think. The guideline of no more than 15% of the primary chapter's annual profit going to administration. That is for the purpose of basically keeping the charity as a whole on side with Revenue Canada, because Revenue Canada allows the entire organization to have more than 15%. And but for our purposes, to make the entire organization actually fit within appropriate Canada Revenue guidelines, that's what the guideline is for provincial chapters. And if there is some problem because of some project that's being launched that ends up with something more than that being required on an interim basis, typically that's fine because you cover it as part of the fundraising activity. So it doesn't mean that you can only buy $1 pencils. It means you can do an ordinary fundraising where you buy the plants and then resell them. And the total of the 15% may be exceeded for the purpose of paying for the plants, but then the profit is offset against it. So that kind of expense is okay. This is just pure administration expense, like bank accounts, paper, that sort of thing. Any more questions on guidelines? Just a second. I didn't get your question.
Thank you.
Sorry.
15% was my question I had, and you answered it. Thank you.
Oh, okay, thank you. Still lurking. One of the questions, it was one that Stephanie raised with respect to Evolve on donating to support a community organization. And yes, when it's designated for a particular purpose, such as the disaster that happened to Jasper, that's an appropriate use of funds. And the other question is actually an annual report question, which might as well answer now since Stephanie's question is here. And it's, can a member from another chapter review the annual financial report? Yes. And or a relative, but the relative can't be a relative of the treasurer or of the president. It can be a relative of a member of your own chapter that does the review. They just can't be related to the president and treasurer who sign off on the report.
Uh-oh.
It's basically a conflict of interest.
That's what we did.
Well, you know, for the future. Okay. This other question is Colleen's from Dardanelle's chapter. Our chapter needs clarification of outside hours and to what reporting is used for these hours. Communications, citizenship, services.
We've found that out in we had a small communications webinar with Stephanie, and we got that all explained through there. Thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, that's great. I'm glad.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's just used for different purposes. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah.
The citizenship one is used for the purpose of the annual report of the charity to CRA. That goes in the little descriptive box there.
Right. Okay.
My printer refused to print wide enough to get the questions beside the people. So
That's good. Thank you.
our chapter, this is a Fern from Beamerside chapter. This question, our chapter held a food drive for the local food bank and some people donated cash. Should the cash be deposited into the chapter bank account and then a check written to the food bank, or just give the cash directly to the food bank? You need to deposit it in your account so that you can actually get a charitable receipt for them and then transfer it over. If they just throw money into a jar or something like that, no, it doesn't have to be deposited, but it probably looks neater if you put it in the bank account and give them a check.
Yeah.
And then you record it at the end of the year as a charitable donation. And if you don't do tax receipts, it goes into the without tax receipt portion. And if you do request a tax receipt, it goes into the tax receipt portion. Because it is a donation to you, and you in turn are donating it to the food bank for the specific purpose of buying food. Yes.
Okay.
There was another question about, I don't know where it went. Some member of the community donated goods.
Oh, that's mine, Carol. Donation of in kind.
Right. We don't like donations in kind at all because it's difficult to value. People overvalue what they're donating because they want a big tax receipt. So our practice for usual stuff is to the chapter actually buys whatever's being donated, and the person that's donating it gives the money back, and we get a cash. We have cash then, and we deposit and give them a tax receipt for the cash.
So in
then
essence, I would write him a check and he would write the check back to me and it would balance out
that's right.
to zero. Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. And what if you don't use checks?
I don't know how you are using two signatures on anything other than a check.
Oh, right. Yes, we do use checks, but some people want to e-transfer.
Doesn't work that way. We can't e-transfer because we can't have two signatures
Okay.
until they invent some other way of doing it. I mean, even at law firms, our trust account, we still have to have checks.
Right.
Just because that's the way it is. I don't know about other charities, but we can make inquiries. Debbie, you may know more about this now because you're a CPA.
No, it's okay. Jan, I'm just asking, is Jan looking at the e-transfer coming in?
Oh, the in's okay.
And the in is okay. It's when you send it back out, Jan, that it can't be an e-transfer.
But the trouble is it's coming into me because what we've got set up at the bank, they won't do e-transfers. So it's kind of like third party. It's coming into me and then I've got to put it into the, our bank account with a check, I guess, because I still have checks, but I don't know how to get around that unless I totally change my bank and then we get all these other fees added on to everything we want to do. So right now we're in a position where we're grandfathered in and we get, we don't get charged service fees and other things. So.
Yeah, we found that TD Bank is still going by the old rules, but isn't charging any fees. So that's kind of the way it is. But I mean, our national account and provincial accounts are allowing e-transfers in, but I don't think either of us deal with TD.
Credit unions also do not charge organizations like us. We just moved our accounts from Bank of Montreal over to the credit union, and we don't even pay for deposit books or anything. Bank of Montreal was charging us for deposit books even. So we are now getting interest on our checking account.
It's very handy, but the problem with credit unions is they treat our organization as if we're some kind of an enemy when we actually want records from a bank records for a chapter. So
I've never had that problem. Okay.
Well, that's good. But I mean, that was in BC and they were,
okay.
Person was on the board of the credit union. So I think it was an inside situation.
Maybe.
Yeah.
That could be. Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Now, the financial statement that I attached had the date changes, but it doesn't have the substantive changes on it. So if you see anything in the charitable programs that's no longer a charitable program or one that needs to be added based on your information of your province, please let me know, because I have here in handwriting on my report to delete card from Ontario and to add the 125th Celebration Fund and the Violet Downey Book Award Fund to the national chapters. So if there's any more changes in the provincial chapter sections that you know about, let me know. Okay, so we're formally into the dreaded financial statement annual report form. And I was just going to run through it sort of page by page. If you want, can you do it by page, Renata? Yeah, page one is instructions, and I don't think, other than the way I clarified the fundraising thing in section E, which is elaborated a bit below, so the specific purpose is included now, but the such as is, yeah, and also include a specific program. So that elaborates what I was talking about earlier, that you can donate to another charity. You just have to be careful that what you're doing is recognized as something that's IODE, and it just doesn't go into the general coffers. And while we're on donating to other charities, at the very end where you have to list what charities you're donated to, I really would like the charitable registration numbers, because otherwise I have to look them up because Revenue Canada wants them on the form we file nationally. And sometimes if, in fact, what's listed as a registered charity is not a registered charity, I put them back into donations to the community and out of that category, because it was just an error on the part of the recording, not on the intent of the donation. Okay, can you change it to the first page of the financial report, please, Renata? Thank you. Yeah, this is a really important page. And last year, it was over 95% of our chapters had it right. So we really don't have a significant problem with page 1. But if you have any questions on page 1, now's the time. Oh, if you're switching banks mid-year, you just include one with the date that they ended and the other one with the date it began. So this is a page where it goes on still. Page. On the next page, membership fees are straightforward. Donations, the tax receipt donations, as I mentioned before, go on the tax receipt line, and the other donations where no receipt's been requested go on the next line. And many chapters have donations for which they do not request official tax receipts, or the people haven't asked for official tax receipts, and that's good. Interest and investment income is actually just the earned income. It's not, if you redeem a GIC, you don't put $1,000 in there. You just put the difference between the $1,000 and you bought the GIC for and the amount you're getting back. Because sometimes I see that kind of number in there, but I can recognize by the nature of the number and reading the rest of the report that it's in fact not all investment income. It was previous income that's already been reported, plus whatever the actual. Likewise, this other revenue transfer stuff, it's interesting to receive it, but I always have to make some of it go out because it's not current year's earnings. It's actually some investments basically, or turning over from one thing to another. But it's usually obvious by looking at the whole report what's there. We still want the information there, but the total other revenue, you know, it's interesting, but I don't know why it's added into the total, because sometimes it doesn't go there. But that's not a problem. We're asking the question, so we have to figure out how to deal with the answer. But this page should include all the revenue we receive from any source during the actual, in this case, the 2024 year.
Carol, it's Jan here.
Mm-hmm.
This other revenue, that includes the revenue from GICs?
Well, you can record it there, but it doesn't, it's GIC revenue is current revenue that you put into a GIC, like the $1,000. If you get 1,035 back, the 35 is the investment income.
Right, and that would be, so why does it need to be recorded here when at the very end you're listing your GICs and what it was, what the value was 1 year to the next?
What I look for the revenue are all the lines, and the other revenue section is really for interest, to figure out what there is. It doesn't, I don't add it in with the other stuff because the revenue should be in the interest and investment income. So the GIC, the entire GIC is not new income, it's old income plus whatever it earned. that's understandable. But the transfer from account, that's for the purpose of figuring out what revenue is doing.
Carol, it's Linda Greiner.
Oh, hi, Linda.
Unless there are other forms where they're included, where do the revenue from thrift stores go in?
At the end, we'll get there.
Oh, okay. So
Okay.
there is a separate section for it.
There's a separate section that's called supplementary financial statement. And it's on the 7th page.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't get
That's
that far.
okay. You're anticipating. That's okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, no. Okay. Page 4 is the one that has the description of funds that I was referring to earlier. And if there is a provincial chapter fund that should be added or deleted, you can let me know. I'm deleting card from Ontario because it's no longer in existence because they have all our money now. Okay. Then the reason there are these separate, or on the next page 5 now, so like there's section A, B, C, and then you total all the A, B, and C's together. The reason those are totaled together is on the charity return, there's a separate place for that information broken out from bursaries and scholarships. So we need separate bursary and scholarship numbers, and that's why there's that little line there that has just bursary and scholarships, line 45. So this is, I mean, all the numbers are right off the charity return, so they kind of tie in. Likewise with the primary chapter expenses, that's what all those little numbers are. They're charity return numbers. So we can track and put them where they should be. Or on page administrative expenses. There's one here that is quite confusing. And that is 4840 is called office supplies, equipment, postage, etc. And then line 4890 is called cost, supplies, assets purchased. 4890 is for if you purchase big stuff, like you're buying a photocopy or something like that. Typically, it should be totally empty because a lot of chapters, unless they have a thrift shop or something, don't have big assets. But the kind of clue is it's not, when you're buying paper, it's not really an asset. So the basic office stuff goes in line 4840, and the exceptional item stuff goes in 4890. But I can usually tell by the amount of the expense whether it looks like it's something that's an asset or it looks like it's something that's a regular office supply, equipment, postage expense. But that's one part that's a bit misleading on the form, and that's because it tracks the same numbers that are on the charity return. Are there any questions about the page that starts with total for C, the one that's on the screen now?
I'm not on the list, unfortunately, because I had sent my workshop form to the wrong email address, so you wouldn't have registered me, but I tried to. And Mary just sent me in. Yes.
That's great.
Okay. So when I see like line 60 where it says expenses refundraising, would that include like all the expenses for an event we have to do, like renting the room, renting chairs and tables, that kind of thing? That's it. Yeah. Right. Okay. Thanks.
It's kind of like it's kind of a little form, but when you net it out, it works.
Great.
And that's because that's not an administrative expense. It's a fundraising expense. But I'm just writing down your name, Marlene. Okay. Oh yeah, Laurentian has these fantastic projects. They had a car rally one year during COVID, and when they always send us in for a certificate of insurance for their events, because usually somebody asks for one and asks as well to be added as an additional insured. But the year of the car rally, our insurer made them buy additional insurance because we really don't have the auto type insurance on our general liability policy.
Well, there was sort of like a car show that we had during one of Street Fest. It was about, the year before, but I don't know if that counted as a rally. And I just became treasurer this year, and I'd only been a member for a year before that. So
yeah, no, it's okay because basically with the events, we get a call back from the insurer asking about if it's like a street thing or something about the details. And your chapter's always been good at providing details, so we've always been able to do it. I mean, they know what house tours are.
Yes,
house tours are. But some of the other stuff they're not so good about. But that's the kind of thing where we have to have the applications in fairly early. And the other wrinkle in the insurance part of it is that our insurance policy just goes like year to year. So if you're having an event, like right now, if you're having an event in 2025, we can't get a certificate of insurance because we don't have a policy yet.
Right.
So it's kind of like a January 1 application would be.
So wait till the new year. Yes.
Yeah. And then it can be expedited if it's early in the new year. Okay. Thanks,
Jan
Marla.
Casborn has her hand up.
Jan.
Yes, thank you. Carol, what is the national levy? What is that used for, and why are we paying that?
It was an alternative when it came into place a decade at least ago to an increase in the annual fee. And we use it purely for expense, just to cover national office expenses.
So instead of the national membership fee being 45, it would have been 50?
Right.
Okay.
And the Constitution allowed us to do it, so it was tried, and we haven't changed it since then. I think I was the Constitution officer back then, which is a long time ago. Originally just a Constitution officer.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Scholarships and bursaries. At one time, Revenue Canada did not request tax to go to people receiving scholarships and bursaries. They now don't have any official exemption at any level, but they have a pragmatic administrative solution of not requiring T slips to be issued to the recipients of bursaries that are $500 or under. Bursaries that are and scholarships that are $500 and over, that your chapter actually pays out as opposed to having some third party do it on your behalf, need to have a T slip from IODE. So keep an eye on it. I keep an eye on the amounts and the description of them, and I don't think there's a huge problem in that regard, but we do, for instance, issue tax receipts for the Angela Bruce chapter because they issue many scholarships or bursaries from their proceeds from their thrift shop to local students going into university. So if you have anything like that happening in your chapter, and we would like to have their social insurance number, but it's not essential, but you do need the name and address of the person that you gave the award to. Debbie?
Carol, does the national chapter actually issue the T4As, even though the money doesn't come out of the national's bank account?
Yeah, because we have to report on all the money. Our charity return report is on all the money across Canada.
Okay. No, that's good to know, because I was warning my own chapter about increasing bursaries over the 500. We would have to apply for the the tax number and so on. But if National will do it on behalf of our chapter, that makes it easier for my chapter.
Yeah, well, basically, it doesn't look like it's on behalf of your chapter. It's like a regular IODE one because they're all one
Right.
organization. But
Sure.
yeah, we've done them for a couple of chapters, the largest one being Angela Bruce. And
Okay.
the protocol we've set up is basically we collect the information and then we put it on a what do you call it?
Spreadsheet?
No, we don't put it on a spread. We put it in, yeah, it's on a spreadsheet so we know who we issued them to, but we save the information, including their social insurance number on a little thing you stick in, whatever they're called.
Flash drive.
Yeah, that one of those.
Okay.
That is not saved in the cloud. It's just
Right.
it's
For
just
privacy issues.
yeah, and it's just in the bottom drawer with personnel files.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And I think we already discussed basically the charitable registration number and charity names for the section 70.
Carol, could I just ask a question about what are chapter fees and officer fees under
Some chapters charge their members a fee. Like some of them charge on each of their members like $2.
Okay.
And the province of Ontario charges each of their chapters $25. So
it's an additional charge or fee.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions on lines 40 to 49? And then on the last page, the summary of the operating account is just a double check so that the numbers at the beginning match the numbers at the end. But it's very handy when you're doing a review because you don't have to do it yourself, like me. So I really like to have this section filled in, and it is 95% plus filled in. So doing great.
Good.
Carol, if I may, please. This is the one area I find from Ontario primary chapters that the balance at the on hand December 2023 doesn't always agree to what they recorded as the ending balance at the end of 2023. And that's the first thing I check from Ontario's point of view, that those two numbers agree, that nothing happened in between, that they possibly missed recording in 23 and it changed the opening bank balance.
That's great because that's probably why I'm getting things that are so accurate.
Yeah, it's the first thing I check when a chapter sends in their financial report, is that I go back to last year's, I look and make sure their ending last year agrees to their opening this year.
Yeah, that's very, very helpful. Thank you very much, Debbie. Okay, and
Jen Casborn has her hand up.
Jen?
Again, thank you.
No, it's okay. The questions, I said in the introduction on the agenda, all questions are useful because other people will be thinking the same thing.
I just wonder at the top of this graph why it says do not include flower fund.
Because that's something that you use for each other. It doesn't ever turn into a charitable thing unless you change it and put it into a fund, and then it can be reported. But if it's
I see.
You know, at the end of the year, you put, say you have like $300 in your flower fund and you're not going to buy any wine for your Christmas party, but you're going to give it to Snack Pack or somebody else, then it turns into something else.
Right. Sorry, we call it something.
Non-receipted donation, I think it'll be called.
Right. Okay, thank you. We have a different name for it. I was thinking it was our flower fundraiser thing.
No, it's like, I don't know. We
Slush
call it
fund.
tea fund at mine. Slush fund is what some people call it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Marlene?
Yes, we actually instituted this year badge fees. So members who don't wear their badges at meetings, they pay $1 or $2. Doesn't raise very much money, but where would that fit into the statement?
Well, it depends what you are going to use it for. In my chapter, we have the same thing, and it goes into the T fund, which is used for like flowers for sick members.
Right. Yeah, we call that a flower fund, but I don't think anybody had determined what that was going to be used for. So I will have to verify.
Yeah, so it could be one or the other. It could be, reportable stuff, or it could be the flower fund, tea fund, slush fund, whatever it's called.
All right. Thank you.
I think we call it a contingency fund at National. Okay. I threw in the insurance information at the end of this because it's useful to know what is the purpose of it and also how to get your certificates. And the application form is a very basic one, but if you have the place where your event is going to happen, if they request that they be added as an insured to our policy, that can be done. And you just need to put it in the description of the event name, add in there, add as an additional insured. And you need the full corporate name and address for that purpose, because the insurer needs that to put it on their form. But our $5 million liability policy, which has never had a claim against it. We did report one year a claim to somebody fell in a driveway at a house tour, but we've never actually had a claim. But we pay for this insurance, and they understand what they're doing because they specialize. This particular section specializes in not-for-profits. And unlike our previous insurer, our current insurer, Cooperators, covers the legal liability from thrift shops for people that might get injured on thrift shop premises, or they may have had their property smashed up somehow. I don't know how they would do it, but third-party liability for thrift shops is included. And often the landlord of thrift shops wants to have a certificate of insurance. But our thrift shops ideally shouldn't have to buy too much more insurance unless their landlord wants some kind of special coverage. Typically, commercial landlords want to have a certificate of insurance every year to go with their lease, which is a very standard thing, and they always ask to be added as an additional insured. And you might have people on house tours, a homeowner who's an insurance savvy person, and they may want some kind of a certificate. We can arrange something in virtually all cases. And it's just a matter of getting the stuff in there. Some are more complicated than others. That's why there's a request that it be put in a month before. I think it's a month before, 6 weeks before. If it's later, we still do our best to get it in place, but that's the value of having a national policy. You just have to do some paperwork and pay once a year some chapter money, $8 a member. Are there any questions about the insurance? Frequently asked questions or the form?
Colleen here from Dardanelles. I have a question. I think this basically answers it. Liability coverage for a claim if a customer / volunteer is injured at the thrift shop. We have a couple that come out from Calgary and camp out here for the summer, and they come and they help us out occasionally in the thrift shop. On our off opening days. Are they covered as a volunteer?
Yeah, they're covered for their liability.
Okay.
Yeah, they are included. Yeah, we don't have to collect any funds because they're included in their extra volunteers anyway.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Michelle?
Insurance certificate for all of our meetings, regardless of where they're being held.
Yes. Regardless of where they're held. If something happens, you just have to report it promptly to the national office and we'll handle it from there and ask questions. The reporting it promptly is the issue because you don't really need a certificate for that purpose. You are automatically covered. Marlene?
Oh, yeah, that was my question. Shirley Ann had a question in the chat about they're meeting at National Defense properties, and Laurentian, we usually meet at city properties, so I have applied for insurance for those.
Yeah.
So, and the same for Shirley Ann?
I haven't got the question in front of me, unfortunately.
Oh, it's in the chat.
He is his office number. Would you like that?
Sorry?
Oh, no.
No.
Where are you calling?
No, nobody needs to have an insurance certificate. The only time they need it is if the person where you're having your event requests it. It's basically they may want proof of insurance. But IODE chapters and their members and their activities are all automatically covered under the organization big umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
Extension 226.
I'm sorry, I can't mute Brenda for some reason.
Yes, but this is our.
I have a question, Carol. It's Jan.
Yeah.
You did answer the question about whether we needed the certificate at every event that we go to. So it's only when they request and you can produce it later, I suppose.
No, they usually want it in advance as part of your making the arrangements.
Oh, okay. I've never been asked for it.
Yeah. So if you aren't asked, you don't need to worry because you're covered. You just have to be able to describe what the event was and what happened.
Okay. So, and also when Michelle mentioned about having the insurance for every meeting, so you would, at the beginning of the year, put in the dates of the meetings and where it's at, you would get authorization for the whole year?
You don't need to do it unless where you're holding the meetings asks for it.
Okay.
The individual, none of the chapters need a certificate of insurance. They are included under the big umbrella policy. It's only if the premises where you're holding the event or the meeting requests it. So like the Department of National Defense in Shirley Ann's question, if they want a certificate, then you have to apply and get one from the insurer.
Okay.
But otherwise, if somebody has some incident during the meeting there, it's covered under the umbrella regardless.
Okay, thank you.
We have a second policy, which is for it's called officers and directors coverage, and that's if it includes the national ones, the provincial ones, all of them, for errors and omissions that they do and messing around, but that doesn't cover anything that resembles fraud. It just covers negligence. But it automatically covers people too in case somebody decides to sue you for something or the other. We've never had a claim, so I don't even know how they'd articulate it, but there's some inventive lawyers out there, so they might figure out how. So unless there's anything further, I haven't got anything else to present. Let's see if there's any other questions here.
Carol, it's Michelle. I have a question about the GST. And I know I had sent you an email regarding making an application for the number so that our charity, because we had a number of significant purchases and the tax was like, over $500. So that's a significant amount that we would receive back. And I'm just, wondering if you could explain more about the process for individual primary chapters to obtain a number and what we do about that.
Yeah, you need each individual chapter can have its own number and make its own claims. And currently it's a cumbersome mess, but it does work, I think. Did you manage to get yours through yet, Jan, or no? Because I could get into your file, but I don't know what's going on.
Well, I haven't revisited it yet again
Oh,
because I'm just thinking, oh my God, not this again. But I will try and go in again. And then if I still am unsuccessful, I'll let you know.
Yeah, because I went in and did our first half of 2024, and I did it entirely online, and it worked fine for doing the national one. And we just have a number like everybody else does when it comes to HST and GST refunds. But they're worthwhile because you get 50% of the GST portion, that is 50% of the 5% that makes up the 13. And then for the 8%, this is in Ontario, you get 82% to 82% back, I think it is, or 83, I'm not sure, one or the other. So it's a significant refund. In the eastern provinces, they only give half of everything, unfortunately, but it's still money, still get it back. But every chapter can have their own number. And I checked, and we are reusing old numbers, but that's perfectly acceptable with CRA. You just have to do the change information on them. So just contact the national office, and Mary will figure out how to get the stuff to me, and we'll do it. And the claims can be made twice a year, and you can go back 4 years. Retaining financial records, as it sets out in the material, 6 years is the basic CRA number, but it's 6 years from the end of the last taxation year. So like right now it'd be 6 years from the end of the current taxation year. So it's 7 years. Nationally, we do 10 because there's contracts involved. Most primary chapters don't have long-term contracts, so there's probably no need to keep it for any more than the basic 7. Jan?
If you were to go back the 4 years, each year can be done as a full year versus every 6 months, like you're required to do going forward.
One of our chapters down east did it that way, and they had to refile and do it every 6 months.
Okay.
So it was
Thank you.
it was a pain. I thought it made sense to do it once a year, but CRA didn't agree. Anything else? I have I can't quite read the Laurentian chapter question, Marlene. Is it one that we've answered or not answered? Oh, there you are.
Okay, yes, there I am. Yeah, those are my questions. They were on the form, which went to the wrong place, so you never had them.
Right.
So I did have a question about if we ever wanted to change banks, and I wasn't entirely sure what that involved. There were some things that we weren't too happy with for BMO for the last little bit, but a lot of it was that I had to reorder checks, and apparently something on their website, like bank wide, was down, and nobody could order checks for several weeks. And so I finally got some, but I thought, well, how does that happen? Because otherwise, if I had to pay somebody, I would have to get a draft.
Yeah, I understand.
Yes.
Yeah, chapters can change bank accounts. Sometimes
Yes.
you have to get some documentation from the
Right.
national office,
Yeah.
but we're happy to provide it.
Okay.
New chapters sometimes need documentation as
Yeah.
well.
Well, anyway, I'd have to get,
We have it, so it's not a problem. Yeah.
I'd have to do research to see if there are any, anything, other banks. I don't really see, fees being that much of an issue for us. So maybe I could just let that go.
Yeah, and they're all giving bad service these days. So.
Well, sure, yes, and which kind of brings me. Well, I guess it doesn't really bring me to the next question, but I don't know if anybody else uses Square for receiving payments for at fundraising events and what their experiences are.
I've only seen them being used at One of a Kind and things like that, and I've asked people about it, and
yes,
they seem quite happy with it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and the fees aren't extravagant. extravagant or anything like that. But they have been requesting that anybody who is considered a team member has to provide their personal address and also their date of birth. I guess it's some kind of reporting requirements that are, government requirements, but so I
It's
don't know.
probably to do with our money laundering laws,
Probably.
because we
Yes.
have to provide all kinds of additional information these days to banks.
Mhm. Yeah. Anyway,
They don't think we're mob outfits.
right. Okay. Yeah, that was about it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
Well, the organizations are with banks all over the place. The national office is being underserved by the Bank of Nova Scotia. The provincial office, I think they had a wrinkle with the bank refused to recognize checks made payable to IODE Ontario. It had to be whatever, the provincial chapter of Ontario, IODE or something. But we've never had a problem with Bank of Nova Scotia. We just have trouble getting back our checks because we regard the canceled check records as part of our sort of due diligence system. And they seem to have a hard time giving us copies of those checks on a consistent basis. But we don't actually blacklist any banks. Debbie?
Carol, just the IOD Ontario deals with TD Bank, and we found that problem with the name was basically one branch.
Oh, good.
And it has seemed to have settled down. We try to get provincial chapter of IOD Ontario written on the check, but very few do. It's gotten better. Just a note of interest for some people, I use an online company called ASP Checks to order checks for a different organization, and I find them less than half the price of ordering checks through the bank. And they're quick. You obviously need to send them a void check or all your information. But I've gotten checks within a few days from that organization. I believe they're printed somewhere in Ontario, but they are far cheaper than ordering checks through your bank, or at least through any bank I've dealt with.
Yeah, that's very helpful, Debbie, because I've heard that from just people ordering their own checks from a different source. But that makes a great deal of sense.
It is. And I even went to a local print shop at one point, and this
Just write it down, otherwise it'll go out. That's good. Yeah, and TD, I've actually suggested to some chapters that have phoned up and said that the bank charges that whoever they were talking to were too high. Because I just see on the forms when they have TD Bank, they don't pay any bank charges. And some other chapters are paying like $75 a year.
for Ontario,
Other
it's
banks, yeah.
based, if we keep a minimum amount in the checking account, they reverse the fees at the month end. So they charge it and then reverse it.
That's handy. Jan?
Debbie, you mentioned a print shop. Is that you can actually take a check that you have and have it printed off at a print shop?
There was a shop in Chatham. They just took all the codes. They had access to printing all the specific bank codes and the bank security features on checks. But they took a lot longer, and they were cheaper than the bank, but not cheaper than this new online place I found.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to respond to Jan. Quick copy in Sarnia, prints checks. It's cheaper than the bank, but it sounds like Debbie's ASP check is far superior cost-wise.
So Quick Copy has the code for IOD Ontario?
You take a blank check, a voided check, and then they set it up for you and print them.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Well, if there's nothing further, it's just a tiny bit after 11. I managed to go on mute so you didn't have to listen to the 11 tongs again. Thank you very much. You're a great group of participants with smart questions, and it's enjoyable dealing with you all. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Carol.
Carol.
Thank you.